darlings. This is Melissa, your Learning Technologies trainer. Thanks for stopping by to engage in this recording of the CPS Adobe Creative Institute Part 3. This video series is a special opportunity for CPS teachers to become a certified Adobe Creative Educator. Now, this is a create as you learn opportunity. So details on creating your portfolio for this certification can be found throughout the video series. Once you've completed the 4 sessions and your portfolio is ready, you will attend a live badging event where you will receive your official Adobe Creative Educator badge. Details on badging events can be found down in the description box.
Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. Just trying to think of where to start. So, okay, last week we did creative process. This week we are going to talk about assessment in the creative classroom. But before that, I just wanted to let you know this session is actually going to be, it's not like last time where we like literally needed up until the last second to finish everything. So we're going to have time today to, after we talk about assessment and after I show you a couple other little things, for you to, if you need time to update your portfolios or need more time with anything we've done so far, I can go over what we should have up to this point. And then you'll have some time to kind of go through that as well. I sent a follow-up email to session 2 with the links to the resources if you need it. So if anyone is watching the recording and needed any of the content, I'll also send one up after this session. And I also sent a link to that Adobe District Leader sign-up form if you're interested. Again, we already have the first session scheduled, which is for March 2nd for that District Leader group to meet. But if you're interested, I'll put the link in the chat later for that as well. Before we get started, any questions or feedback, reflections? Have you had a chance to try any of this and kind of wonderings? Anything like that?
I think the only question I have is after our last session, because we ran right up to the clock, I know we did not, or at least I haven't added whatever it was. So is that book cover or whatever it is just what we're adding? Okay.
So what I'll do is at the end of this session, when we go to add, I'll kind of go over everything we should have. And then if we need time to go and grab any of that stuff or make any changes, we could talk about that as, you know, together and figure that out. Anything else? All right, let's get to it. So creative assessment. Let me share my screen. Okay, so in the first session when we were all together, we took a look at creative tools. Last week, we took a look at creative process and what that could look like in the creative classroom. This week, we are going to, oops, that's the wrong way. How did I do that? This week, we're going to take a deeper look at assessment and talk about, you know, some of the things we started to allude to last week when we were looking at process. Whereas process takes a look at like the actual act of creating, what we want to talk about this week is, okay, great, now we have these creative artifacts. How do we actually assess them? And we started to do that a little bit, if you remember, at the beginning of the lesson where we were kind of ground setting by assessing some of those creative works collectively, those exemplars, to kind of, what do you call it? Set the common expectation for the whole class. We're going to talk a little bit more about those 1-point rubrics and then take a look at some formative and summative assessment protocols. So the schedule for this session, again, it'll be a little bit upfront of defining. Then we'll actually be diving in to talk about what that supportive creative path looks like and get you to create a reflection video. And then we'll wrap it up and add those assessments to the portfolio. Then I want to show you a couple of other little things that are not part of assessment, but just another cool little add-on to Express that we did last month that I think you might like. Now, as we get started thinking about assessment, what I'd love for you to do in the chat, if you could put a number from 1 to 10 in terms of how you feel about assessment, with 1 being I give grades because I have to, but I don't really find it useful for my learners. 10 being I feel empowered by all levels of assessment, formative and summative, and I find them really valuable for my students. And I'll stop sharing for a second just so I can see the chat. I'm sure it would not surprise you that this is also all over the map when we do these sessions. We're everywhere from 1 to 10. So not surprising. Quick question for anyone willing to share, regardless of where your number is, kind of why you feel that way, or either what feels empowering about it or what does not feel very useful about assessment.
I think for me, it depends on what type of assessment we're talking about. If it's assessment that I've created, you know, that I feel like is really assessing what we're working on and what we're doing, it's great. And I can use that. But if it's assessment that is forced upon me and I don't feel like it's the best type of assessment, then that's a whole nother story.
So wait, you're not a fan of standardized testing from the state? This is shocking.
I know, right?
I love this and find it super valuable. Melissa.
Oh, sorry, I was in the middle of a stretch. I think that it is unfair for my students, for me not to have a clearly defined reason why I am doing things in my classroom. So that's why I find value in them. And as far as the standardized tests that I don't have a say in, I can't stand them, but they still have an impact on my students. So I owe it to them to get them prepared for it.
Okay, so it's kind of the we recognize the value of assessment, but at the same time, you know, Elizabeth, what I heard you saying is, if I actually have the power to create that assessment, then I'll definitely ensure there's value in it. But if I'm just kind of giving assessment for the sake of giving assessment, especially in a high stakes testing kind of situation, maybe not as valuable. All right. Anyone else want to chime in, or? Okay. So assessment in many ways is something that I think we recognize it is I don't want to say necessary evil, but it is in many ways, right? Because going back to even in my own classroom, I remember when I first started teaching, I was assigned a mentor teacher, and she used to tell me, I taught middle school math, so she would tell me at the end of every class, you have to put 3 problems on the board, give out index cards, and have students fill out the index cards with the problems. And what I learned was that my desk could hold lots of stacks of index cards because I just had no time to go through that data, even though I knew it would be extremely valuable and inform my teaching. And it can feel very scary. And one of the reasons why is it's often framed within what we call the typical student learning journey, right? And in the typical student learning journey, a teacher shares content, students get assignment, students do assignment, teachers grade it, right? And where that often leaves students is here, right? In a typical student experience, they're wondering, you know, how do I get an A? Or in some cases, our students aren't asking themselves how to get an A. They're asking how they can pass or get a B or whatever. But is this good enough? And why did I get that grade? And ultimately, I think we know that if students, you know, don't know where to start or you know, where to go or what to do next, they don't know what to do and when. And so rubrics are great, but they're only one piece of the puzzle. And so where we're trying to move from is this typical learning journey to what we call the supportive learning journey. And this is what we started to model last week. Students sharing learning goals, rubrics, and exemplars, students engaging with and exploring content, then explaining and applying their learning, iterating and improving on their work, and then finally, both students and teachers are able to evaluate the process and the product of that learning. And, you know, so why are we so focused on creative process? Well, part of it is we need to provide opportunities for creative thinking and creative expression. We can't enhance student creativity if we don't give them the opportunities. And so, you're going to see later, there's a lightning learning class linked at the end of today's resources. I actually was the instructor for that one. So formative assessment, as I talked about with the index cards, has always been kind of like a passion area of mine in terms of coming from a math background. I always recognized that if I just relied on unit tests and things like that, I would never get the data I needed to help my students move from point A to point B. So finding new ways to quickly do some of those formative assessments in a way that was easy to collect data and inform my practice was really critical to actually helping me improve student learning outcomes in the classroom. And so notice, if we look at that supportive learning journey and we think about the different types of formative assessment strategies we can use, they can actually inject themselves into any areas of this supportive student learning journey. So we can provide formative feedback while students are engaging and exploring content, or while they're explaining and applying their learning, or while they're iterating and improving on their work. And notice that's kind of what happened last week when we went through that creative process. If we reflect back on it, part of what we had you doing when we had you going into the Padlet and providing feedback on each other's work, those were all pieces of formative feedback to help inform the learning process, so that ultimately the work you were generating at the end was better than before you were providing those, before you were getting those rounds of feedback. Now, in terms of summative assessments, rubrics are great for creative works, but again, remember, when we took a look, when we started to take a look at the rubrics last week, we talked about some of the challenges of traditional rubrics. Ultimately, what we want is for students to be able to identify the criteria before they begin. It has to be meaningful. It's more than just grading assignments, right? It helps students understand what worked well, what can be improved upon, and helps them assess content knowledge and higher order thinking, right? When we talk about the 4 C's, that's really what we're talking about. To that end, what we did last week, how we modeled using the use of exemplars, we're going to do that a little bit today, but exemplars are powerful to help students know what to aim toward and what to avoid. And that's why with any of the work we're doing with educators or with students, we always start out with those exemplars before diving into the work, because ultimately that's what helps kind of set the tone for that supportive learning journey. And again, summative assessments, summative feedback, just like with those formative assessments, can happen throughout this learning journey. By doing this, what we wind up with is students know how to do well on the project, they know what they need to do to keep improving and growing, and they understand why they got the grade they got. So what I'd like you to do is, I'm actually going to share the link to the resources for today. But initial thoughts on anything we just talked about, wonderings, agree, disagree. I didn't hear anything you just said. There was a lot of you talking. Any of it. I'm here for it. Oh, wait, Debbie, you wrote in the chat. My struggle for the longest is how to have students understand the importance of the learning journey and the value of the learning experience as a whole. They won't do it. So, Debbie, the piece you're talking about with the learning journey, that's part of why we focus on modeling through the use of portfolios with webpage, right? So the fact that we keep going back, I'm working with a group of math teachers in New York City where essentially we're doing that. We're having them over the course of units, over the course of several, of a semester, plug in links to artifacts that they're using, even if it's not creative artifacts, but simply links to those resources on a page that they can constantly go back to and see kind of where they started from, where they wound up, and understand the growth they made over time. Because I think that's the only way that we can get them without it being a grade to kind of see the value in that, right? Ultimately, we want them to start to break down anxiety by being able to go through and see, oh, wow, I did make a lot of growth. Because we always know everyone's so fixated on the moment, the current moment. Laura said the kids will always ask if it will be graded. So my question then would be, if they're always asking why do you think? Why do you think they're always asking if it will be graded?
Yeah. So they see if it's important or if it's of value, it's going to be graded. And maybe that's our fault for having placed that importance or that value over it on them over time. I don't know.
So if we're saying that it's the only thing that, if they think it's the only thing that matters, I guess my question is, this is where, wait, it's human to weight rather, or not the value. Melissa, this is fair also. There's part of me that wonders, though, if the answer is no, it's not going to be graded. Does that mean it's just like, okay, then I don't value, then I put zero effort into this at all? Is that what you're seeing? If something's not graded, I do not care.
For my ninth graders, at least, yes, that is the case. If it's ungraded, the only students who will do it are the ones who have bought in, right? Who understand the importance of that learning journey and how overall that effort is going to help them reach that end goal. But for a lot of them, they can't conceptualize that end goal. They don't know or understand what they're working towards, because to them, school is just a requirement and it's a barrier to their next step, which is to get out.
So this is going to be a good lead into our talk about like 1-point rubrics and things like that. But what we've noticed in our work with students is that one of the reasons we talked about the importance of creativity even back in the first session is because, again, the research has shown students value creative opportunities, teachers value creative opportunities. It's been finding the space in our classrooms for it that's been the challenge. So one of the pieces of pushback we often get from teachers is they'll say, yeah, but the problem is if you move away from traditional rubrics and traditional grading structures to something like a 1-point rubric, the high achieving students will be less incentivized because it won't, if everyone's getting a good grade or if everyone's doing well, then how do they make themselves stand out? And we were like, there's never been a classroom in the world where a high achieving student has been de-incentivized to not, like, those students will always find a way to push and will always find a way to do more. But the challenge here is to find opportunities for every student to feel like they can be successful. And so whether or not it's being graded, when we went through those feedback cycles last week, those are forms of assessment. Now, how we frame it to our students in terms of this equates to a numerical grade or the process or something like that, that's something that you can figure out if there's a way to structure it to make that happen. But ultimately, that's kind of the challenge, right? The link I put into the chat was our page for this week on creative assessment. What I'd love for you to do is under step 1, where it says creative assessment workbook. If you can click on that, just like last week, it'll ask you to make a copy of the workbook. And I'll share my screen again. Yep. I will copy the link one more time. No problem, Jennifer. Okay. Okay, so you should have an assessment workbook here. And in that assessment workbook, I'm going to skip this, but we don't have to do this, but this is something we normally do as a framing activity. But ultimately, when we're in the room with everyone, we want them to assess something that they probably all did together. So everyone probably had some type of beverage this morning. We asked them to assess that beverage using this 1-point rubric. Now, again, remember, the 1-point rubric is not about 0 or 1 versus grading it on a scale of 1 to 100. It's the idea that we're only evaluating one set of criteria and then evaluating for areas of improvement and areas that exceed expectations on those different categories. So rather than give the grade, again, remember, we can do it this way. Now, we also took a look last week at an example of a 1-point rubric that did have like numbers on it, and that often confuses people with the idea of the 1-point rubric when there are numbers here that are clearly 1 through 4. But again, these were not necessarily numbers that are aligned to a goal that they're going to receive. It could be, but ultimately, this is just a numerical indicator of whether or not the learning goal was not met, partially met, or it exceeded the learning goal. This is in addition to that qualitative feedback around areas for improvement or areas that exceed expectations. So similar to what we did last week, what I want to do now is we're going to evaluate a couple of exemplars for this idea of creating a 6-word summary of the story of the 3 little pigs. Then we're going to create a graphic for that story that visually connects to the summary, and our design should meet the criteria below. So this is similar to what we took a look at last week, but let's take a look at the first couple of examples. So this first one is, again, we're looking at the criteria are summary and presentation design. So for summary, the summary uses only 6 words. It summarizes the theme of the story and connects to at least 2 moments of the story, beginning, middle, and end. Presentation design, text is easy to read, font is large enough, and contrast is high. The imagery promotes the idea of the story through either color choice or photos. So what do we think of this first example? Any areas for improvement or areas that exceed expectations for either the summary or the presentation design? I cannot see if there's anything in the chat.
Oh, we're blowing up the chat.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can't see the chat. Sorry.
I would be happy to be your chat.
Please do that.
Yes. Okay. So we've had multiple comments around the length. It is more than 6 words. Although it is too long, the summary itself is accurate or good. The contrast is not as high as we'd like to be. It's definitely hard to read over the sky. Some questions about why just the word down is white. And the imagery looks like we could have picked something that fit the storyline a little more.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Yep, go for it.
I don't want to type it out. It also says that it is supposed to summarize the theme of the story. This is kind of the actions of the story, not like the overall theme of the story.
Yeah,
good point.
It's interesting how people observe, or how people interpret this image. I mean, generally the things we always hear, again, more than 6 words. Why is the word down in white? It's the only one that seems like it's in a different color white. The image itself, some people see it connecting, others don't. But again, this is a point of clarification, right? So it's an area that an area for improvement, and therefore something that then students can go back and then make their modifications of. Anything else on this one?
Can I just point out just a confusion piece that my kids would call? So like your directions above the chart say, create a 6-word summary of the story of the 3 little pigs. But then the criteria of the summary then focuses in specifically on the theme of the story. So my kids would say, well, you told us to do 2 different things there. The summary of the actual events in the story is what the directions say. But then in this criteria, we're focusing just on the theme of the story.
I'm reading it to see if I'm getting. So create a 6-word summary. Okay. The summary uses 6 words. It summarizes the theme of the story. So you're saying that the summary does not necessarily have to be the summary of the theme. I would view that. So honestly, first, I could totally see students saying that. Second, I would point to the criteria and say that's what they should be evaluating on. So there's a descriptor for the assignment in the top, but ultimately how they should be building their work is based on the criteria in the rubric.
Because, like, I don't know, we can argue semantics here, but the theme of the Three Little Pigs is like, take the time and do the work right. And then, like, this description is just saying, like, what happened in the story. So
that's fair. That's fair. Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, that's fair. We could make a modification to the criteria. Anything else on example 1? Okay, we'll take a look at example 2. How about this one? Either summary or presentation design.
Okay, in the chat, better image, 6 words, the background image fits here, better contrast, very easy to read.
So I've heard both sides of this one, but I agree. I think the background image does connect, although interestingly, it does say that the I'm just trying to see. So we've had some people say that the image didn't resonate, although what I would make the argument of is it says pigs made 3 homes, 1 survived. Sometimes we get the question of what survived, the pig or the home? Mm-hmm. But I think that's answered by the graphic behind it. That's my interpretation.
Yep. We have a couple more comments. It connects the beginning to middle to end. Younger students would understand this one. Couple people who like that the background represents the home that survived, the brick house.
Yeah. One thing some people will often point to is that in the summary, it says that it connects to at least 2 moments. So people are often like, well, the image is just the last house. But again, remember, it's the summary, not the graphic, that has to connect in this case. But again, these are all discussion points in terms of in terms of providing some of that that feedback. So ultimately, the goal here is really to get, and this is something we kind of started in the last session. The goal is to get students going through those feedback cycles. So anytime that we can actually provide those opportunities for students to be stepping in and providing feedback around that work, we're actually getting them to kind of understand the why we want them doing this type of work. Other thoughts on, or just kind of general assessment thoughts based on what we talked about? I could view this, for example, I could view a 1-point rubric as being easy to implement. Here's some of the things I'm struggling with about conceptually how I would do this. I see Melissa's laughing, so I already know I got something coming to me. I just don't know what.
No, I'm sorry. I was actually laughing. I was smiling, not laughing, at Laura because she was just, I was feeling her in that moment because my neck was stiff too. So I was just, that's what I was smiling about. I apologize, Jesse.
You do not owe me an apology. I'm ever since the math thing, I'm always guarded now. I'm like, oh no, Melissa's coming after me.
You do have to watch yourself. I'm just saying, with Melissa in the room, you never know. I mean,
ELA just called you out though, so it's not just me.
Right.
You got to be on your toes with this group.
I do have a question about the 1-point rubric because this is my first experience with it. So it is something completely new to me. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the 1-point rubric with the 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know you said that is sometimes confusing. And that the 1, 2, 3, 4 is around the learning goal, but how do you explain, because I'm not even getting it, how do you explain that to students that when they're used to a 4-point rubric, that is not the same as you did good or you did not, when I look at the language and it says it exceeds and it does not meet.
So this goes back to the question about whether or not we're grading something, right? Is this being graded? Well, if we were doing this over the course of a class assignment, for instance, creating a graphic that, or the book cover assignment, the book cover assignment could have simply been to go through that process and create the book cover assignment as an artifact of learning. And we still could have gone through those feedback cycles, which could have included those points. And again, the points would more be as a reference for, here's the feedback. But ultimately, if you're wondering how this feedback builds up to whether or not you are meeting the goal, here's kind of the number. But the number is not going to be marked down as something that I'm going to necessarily count towards your grade. I'm putting into the chat for you. This is Jennifer Gonzalez, runs the Cult of Pedagogy blog. This is actually her kind of defining piece about the single point rubric, and kind of something that we've used to kind of frame a lot of our work. I see Rosemary, thank you. You also put something in the chat about single point rubrics. So this, if you're looking for more information on that specifically, that can kind of help you contextualize. But the idea behind that 1 through 4 is the 1 through 4 does not have to be something that is an actual assessment necessarily, right? It's more of, hey, you've gotten this feedback, but if you're wondering, okay, am I on track to meet the goal? Am I still, like, you know, despite getting the feedback, am I still kind of doing what I'm supposed to be doing? That can be a teacher's way of kind of formatively checking in and being like, yeah, you're meeting the goal, you're exceeding. So it's a way of kind of numerically providing some, you know, a summary of what's in those feedback columns, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to count it for a grade. Now,
So
some
if
teachers want that there because ultimately they know that they have to hold students accountable for doing the work. And so as they circulate and go around, they may actually provide those kind of those grades. Could they be counted toward your grade book? Sure, but you don't have to. And ultimately, this is, if you look at those numbers for me, remember I talked about last week figuring out the how I sat there with my co-professor and I was like plugging in, we were trying to figure out descriptors for what would earn, what would be a 2, what would be a 3, what would be a 1, what would be a 4. And we were coming up with these totally arbitrary things like, if they did 3 things, it was a 2, and if they did 4 things, it was a 3. But we all know that stuff doesn't matter. And I'm sure we've been in that position before where we've looked at a rubric and said, this makes no sense. Well, imagine we did need ultimately to provide a grade. We did need some form of summative assessment. To me, that 1, 2, 3, 4, where the 1, 2, 3, 4 is those frames of learning goal not met, partially met, met, or exceeds, that is an actual frame that makes sense. Because we have the learning goal, we're providing the feedback based on that 1-point rubric. If we need to add that 1 through 4, because we do need a numerical value, we can do that at the end. But that is something every student can wrap their head around. They either didn't meet the goal, they met the goal, they exceeded the goal. Nothing should be a surprise because they've gone through multiple feedback cycles as part of this process. And again, this may require, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if I said this already or if this is in the next presentation, but I think it might be the next one. But this isn't an overnight thing, right? It's not like all of a sudden we go and we're like, you know what? We're changing everything tonight. We try it out with one assignment because ultimately we need to see how this fits into our own style of teaching. There are 12 people on this call who all have classrooms who are all doing different things with their students who are going to need to find a way that works for them to build this type of thinking into their teaching. So the nice part about this is it's flexible and provides enough structure to open up the learning opportunities for students, but at the same time still provide the summative piece if I need it, or I can just use it as a formative assessment, or it just becomes a frame I could use in the work to keep students, to hold students accountable for doing the assignment. I'm just looking through the chat. Tiffany, I think that's a good way of summing it up. It's definitely a use case. So it's being evaluated, not graded. So students are still getting feedback, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to wind up with a grade. But remember, it can be summative. It can be formative. It can be whatever you want it to be. But ultimately, by providing qualitative feedback over just, a number, they're understanding how they can actually move from point A to point B. So let's say they only partially met the learning goal. Well, going through those feedback cycles is ultimately how they'll find out how they move from 2 to 3, and that's part of the supportive learning journey. Tiffany, I agree with that too. Other thoughts? Okay. What we are going to do now, the artifact we're going to create from today is we're going to create a video in Express. That video is going to be about assessment. I'll put the assignment up on the screen. Hold on one sec. So what we're going to do is create a video reflection in Express with the prompt being, how can you use these assessment strategies like 1-point rubrics, frequent formative feedback, and checks for understanding in your practice? If you are already doing those things, awesome, talk about that. It can have voiceover. It doesn't have to have voiceover. It can be whatever you want it to be. Again, that's the beauty of a creative work. It's whatever you want it to be. So you're going to be creating that video reflection, and then we will add that to our portfolio. But before we do that, after we're done with this, I will actually go back in and we will talk through all of the different things that should be in our portfolio up to this point, because I know we wrapped up quickly last time. So we'll kind of do a reset on that. And that good? Okay. I'm going to notice on the last slide, it actually has, if you're looking to assess yourself, a rubric for how you could assess your own work, right? So assessing it for video content and for design, just if you're interested in kind of going through this process yourself. I'm going to put 10 minutes on. We'll give you 10 minutes to create a video. Does everyone remember how to create a video? If we don't, we log into express.adobe.com. You know what? I should probably model. I will model. It's been a long week. So in Adobe Express, once you're logged in from the home screen, remember I could hit plus, choose video, and then it'll ask me for the name of the video. I could choose start from scratch, and that will actually bring up the video editor to get us started. So I will put 10 minutes on. There we go. All right. I will not put music on because in case you're recording and you want to use audio. Brittany, what errors are you getting?
So I was able to do my voiceover for one slide. It was like 3 seconds, fine. And then I'm trying to do a voiceover for a second slide. And every time I try to go into it, it says, uh-oh, we're unable to record your voice right now. Get help with mic issues. I've switched off my AirPods. I've switched to just my computer. So I'm confused. It just won't let me record on this specific slide for whatever reason.
Okay, 2 seconds. The answer to how much time is left is 10 minutes past, but we're good on time, so feel free to take additional time if that's what you're working on. I could help Brittany troubleshoot. Brittany, try refreshing altogether. Just refreshing the whole window. Don't worry about the other thing would be delete the slide and try it again. This shouldn't happen, but let's just see what happens. Brittany, that worked?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay,
It was
sorry, that was
very
frustrating. Tiffany, in video, no. I don't think there's undo. I think that's actually coming with the new release. So video has been rebuilt from the ground up. We're probably going to be releasing it at the end of the school year, but it is going to be a much more comprehensive tool. All right, how's it looking for everyone? Couple more minutes?
I could definitely use some more time. I'm running into some audio issues myself with my lovely AirPods today.
Okay. It's the AirPods or you're having an issue with?
So I was downloading some examples of different rubrics and things I've used in the past to show where I've been and where I want to go. And so I just started doing my audio overlay to that, and I recorded something and then just hit play, and it's not giving me anything back. So I don't know if it picked it up or if I'm just not hearing it. So I'm trying to troubleshoot that now.
Okay, got it. Yep, Brittany, we're going to add this to the portfolio. Hold on, Melissa. I'm sending you the Bitmoji requested. Okay, so while we're finishing up, we'll give 2 more minutes. And then I want to show one new feature that we brought into Express, and then we'll go over portfolio stuff. Yep, Rosemary, I'll share everything with you via email. I saw it actually after the session started. Actually, I just sent an email out to the group we started with yesterday. I'll just forward that. Okay. Okay. Dion, you do not have to have voiceovers. If you do not want to have voiceover, you do not have to. You could just use text. You could use music, whatever you want. In terms of where we are with our portfolios, going back to the first session, in our portfolios at this point, we should have our goals graphic, the first one we created, the video talking about the goals, and the book cover. And then we're adding this video. So there should be 4 artifacts in there by the end of today. I'm just going over that in my head. That is correct. Okay. Because we only did the one thing. Right. Goals graphic, video talking about the goals graphic, the book cover, the formative assessment reflection video. Yes, those are the 4 things so far. No, Melissa, I'm actually glad you did that. So that's good. Because I was counting in my head. I was like, okay, wait, 1, 2, 3. Yep. So at the end of today, you have 4 things in your portfolio. The one thing I wanted to show you, and I know we've talked about this, and again, you could take more time. We're going to have a little bit of time at the end that you could actually go back and work on portfolio stuff. I'll stay here if anyone needs any help on the video or the portfolio or anything. I'll just show this last piece. This way I can get everyone on their merry way, especially since I know that there are parent nights going on. So the reflection videos, you don't need to accompany it with a reflection. To be honest, Debbie, on a couple of the assignments, I would normally ask for a paragraph or 2, but to me, because we were trying to do this online and in a condensed fashion, I'm okay with just having the artifacts up there. I just want people to go through the process of adding content to a portfolio page. But I would, in general, if we were doing this with students, I would definitely want them adding a reflection piece to the work product. The videos, you clearly don't have to, but maybe with like some of the things like the book cover. Remember, we skipped one last week. So the one that we had people do, which I just find too hard to do online, is the screenshotting of the 3 prototypes, and then the second one, the final book cover, and talking about the process. But we didn't have enough time, so we just skipped that part. One thing that I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to dive deep next week into our education exchange. And I know that I showed this when we were briefly. I think I showed this when we were together, but we release our monthly challenges every month. And I mentioned that there's a page where we archive all of them. So we just launched our February challenges, which are Black History Month challenges. But one of the ones I wanted to show you was what we did last month in January while I was out there. So as you know, we've talked about the fact that Adobe Express is one piece of what Adobe offers. We also have the entire Creative Cloud, which is all of those applications like Photoshop, Premiere, Illustrator, all those other things. One of the things that we actually have out there is called Character Animator. And so last month's challenge was actually based on a version of Character Animator that is now part of Adobe Express called the Animate from Audio feature. So our challenge last month actually had a number of different activities where, and I'll show you a couple of exemplars as well, where students could go in and either do Get to Know Me or use a history lesson card. And I actually created a bit.ly specifically to get to the Animate with Audio feature. I'll put this link in the chat in a moment. But essentially what this allows me to do is pick a character and a background. Yep, I'll just leave the same character. I'll choose a different background. But again, the background can be uploaded images. So our challenge from last month had those images that can be uploaded. And then I could simply record. Hi, thanks for joining me in today's training. I hope you had a good time and really looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. Hit done, it'll process. And so this is, I've talked about Adobe Express as kind of our entry point into creativity, but what it's quickly becoming is a hub for all of our different products at a kind of entry point use. So right now, this is a part of Adobe Express, which is available like through the challenge, and that's why I made a hyperlink to it, but you wouldn't see it if you were navigating through Express. But it's finding its way there to will be part of like the quick actions sooner rather than later. And so here's the video. I can trim it. And notice it'll move my characters, facial expressions, and oops. Okay, here we go. And I'll hit play. Hi, thanks for joining me in today's training. I hope you had a good time and really looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. And so that becomes something I could download and then add into a video. Here's a couple of examples of how this was actually used for last month's challenge. So Tim Needles, who's one of our ACE leaders based out of New York, did a couple of examples. Here was the Guess Where I Am.
Hey, my name's Sal. This is my town. It was formed in 1665. We have 4 state parks here. It's pretty nice. I love it. It's cold in the winter. It's hot in the summer. And we mostly speak English. Could you guess where I am?
And another one using the Guess Where I Am, this time solar system.
Which planet is this? Well, sometimes this is called the jewel of the solar system. A year on this planet is more than 29 years on Earth. And you can't stand on this planet because it's mostly gas. In fact, in 2034, NASA's sending the Dragonfly, a dual rotor quadcopter like a drone, to one of its icy moons. And it was named after a Roman god, just like my favorite day of the weekend. Can you guess what planet this is?
And so that's just one of the new features being added to Adobe Express. The other one, so as you can see from Tim's videos, the image in the background was actually done in Adobe Express, and then the video was just added on top of it. The video downloaded from the Animate with Audio feature. So really simple to use. One of my favorite new features. And then if you've seen Adobe Podcast or heard of it, that is actually in beta now. You can sign up for the beta. That is actually being incorporated into Adobe Express as well. It's one of my favorite things that they've come out with since I've been at Adobe. But essentially, imagine a podcast tool for students where I'll put the bit.ly in the chat. Or I'll just put the link directly to it. If you watch the demo for Adobe Podcast, students can join, have a conversation with someone. It will transcribe the conversation. And then instead of students having to edit within an audio tool, like the way I was doing before, where I snip the beginning or edit with the sound waves, you can simply delete text, and that's how it will edit. You can edit text out, and it will edit the audio behind the scenes. It will also auto edit out and it will optimize audio to make it sound like you're in the same place and not on 2 separate recordings using 2 separate audio sources or using Debbie's AirPods. So lots of flexibility here. So the one thing I love about Express is they're constantly planning on adding more to it, even beyond what we currently have with graphics, video, and websites, because they recognize it's kind of our hub for creativity as an entry point for all students. Rosemary, sorry, missed it. Can I log my students in, or do I need to use a teacher account to record? I feel like this is a Debbie question.
It is a Debbie question. So Rosemary, all teachers and all students do have accounts. So when you go to log your students in, you can go to express.adobe.com. Is that it, Jesse? Is that right? Express.adobe.com.
Express.adobe.com.
And we were also adding it to Clever. I don't know if the tile's there yet or not. I'd have to go in and check. When you get there, just keep in mind that login screen, you naturally want to go to the left where it says Google. You don't. You want to have your students go to the right, right? And then once you click on the, I can't remember, does it say I'm a teacher, I'm a student, something like that?
Student, and they're actually making this easier. Dean knows. Dean had to model this for like everyone the first week.
Yes.
So yeah, this should be easier. Melissa, where do they go to sign it? Ooh, wait, more than one student. What do
So
mean
you said that they could like have a conversation with each other, like two different characters. Is that
podcast? They would invite them, kind of like with a meet link.
Gotcha.
But podcast is not public yet; it's in beta. You'd have to actually apply for beta access, which I would recommend that you do, so you can test it out. We're always looking for feedback. The person developing it is actually based in New York City, and I've had a chance to meet with him. He's really excited about the possibilities for what this could look like in the classroom for students. So I have definitely been all about, getting as many people on board in education that are interested in doing that with him, because I want him to see this. There's definitely a market, so to speak. Okay. Other questions on anything we've covered so far today? Oh, so
okay, I'll stop typing in the chat.
Okay, I just saw that, Rosemary. So yeah, you can give them the link that you have here. And I'm just
the animator link. Okay.
Yeah, the animate link, and actually it does not even look like it requires a login. It might require a login. I'm already logged in. Let me see what happens if I
Right. It probably does.
I'm just double checking. I don't know. I'm on the audio screen and I'm logged out. It looks like I can still record. It just, again, remember, it's not
I went incognito and it's letting me record. But
yeah, right. It's not going to save to an account. Again, because it's not fully integrated with Express yet. So it's an Express feature. Remember I said it's not in Express though. So you should be able to record. It will not save it to an account. So it has to be downloaded. And then if you wanted to make it part of a video or something like that, it would have to be uploaded.
Any idea if it works from iPads?
I have seen, actually I saw Tim record on an iPad, so it should work.
Okay.
Jess,
I'll let you know tomorrow how it went.
I want to see examples. Okay. Jessica, question?
Yes. Hi. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a doctor's appointment, but I wanted to know if there were any plans to create any kind of way for teachers to create classrooms or groups or studios within the Creative Cloud?
So currently there is, so it's weird. There is a way for districts to do that have no access to Express whatsoever. So like if you see like an Adobe Classroom feature, it's actually designed for districts that are not like Cincinnati where everyone has access. It was designed to get teachers who have an account, create a quick way for students to enter in and do it. So I can find out for our next meeting, Jessica, if that's on the roadmap to integrate a broader feature. Right now, we kind of operate within the frame. Like, so we have integrations for Canvas and for Google Classroom. And I think we're working on one for Schoology. So our goal is to not try to reinvent the wheel, but to hopefully integrate with everything else. But I'll confirm that for next for our fourth session next week.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's just I know we're dropping Schoology, I think, for next year. I don't know what we're going with. I think they're still trying to decide. So I'm in the process of moving all of my things out to like the apps. Like I'm using Tinkercad's classes and Polar Cloud's classes and WeVideo's classes because it's just, I don't know where we're headed as far as our LMS, but it seems like it changes every few years and I don't want to keep losing everything.
Well, the good news is everything will still exist in your account, even if no matter what LMS you go to, everything will still exist within your Express account, right? So all that content will still be there. In terms of organizing classes, I think we've been trying to we've been taking the approach of rather than try to become our own LMS, if we can actually have like for instance, we have an integration now with Google Classroom where you can basically create an assignment in Express directly from Classroom, attach the template, and have students submit right through there. So we've been looking at trying to do integrations like that to make it easier to and have to, like you said, go to each individual product to create your own set of classes, which you're then managing across the board.
Right. Yeah. I guess I'm a unique situation, but as a STEAM lab teacher, I have 550 students. So it doesn't make sense for me to create all these Google Classrooms. So like, studios and things like that always help. It's a place where kids can turn in work and then I can, access it. But I can always use Google Drive if, as a backup, if that's not an option. I just wanted to know maybe if it was in the works. Thanks.
I will find out for next session what our roadmap is for sure.
And then Jesse, if I can jump in real quick, just to address the LMS question or remark that was brought up. I am part of the RFP committee for our student services. And so I just want to give you as much of an update that I have available at this time. I do know that the vote that was done last month has been tallied, and a final recommendation from the RFP committee has been made to the superintendent. And so I anticipate an announcement will be coming here very shortly. It should be going through for board approval as well. We are going to still have Schoology for another year, so you're not losing access to anything yet. We will have it up through next school year. There will be a transition period where you'll have some trainings from the Learning Technologies team and others throughout the course of the year. We will be transferring all of your existing courses to the new system. So a lot of that work will be done on the back end for you. And then you'll just have to do any minor tweaking to your new courses in the new system. We will also have a way to show you how to export any saved resources that you have that don't currently exist in a course, so that you can import them into the new system as well. So I don't want anyone to be nervous about losing anything. We're doing everything we can to make that transition as smooth as possible.
That sounds awesome. Thanks, Deb.
All right, so we have a few minutes left. Last thing I'll do before I kind of give some open time for anyone who needs some support for the next 10 minutes or so is if you are interested in potentially working with us on the Adobe District Leader piece that we had talked about. I pulled together a form that I'll also send in an email. I sent it already also, but I put it into the chat. Again, there's no commitment if you're filling it out, but just I'm trying to get a sense of how many people we'll be working with. Information is in the form around kind of what it entails, but if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me directly. And Debbie, you did mention there are trainings coming up too, right? You have people, or we still need people, or?
So I will always take more people. So I'm going to give you guys the first preview. Actually, if you give me a second, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. So we have a training that's going to be coming up on March 3rd that you guys are not aware of. And so I want to be able to share that with you real quick. If you give me a second, let's see if I can find what I need here. Okay. And of course, that was not it. So what we're doing is we've gotten permission from senior leadership to offer some additional technology training outside of the professional development release days. So for all of your colleagues and yourselves, if you're interested, who might be wanting some technology training that they haven't gotten access to at their core content area PDs on the release day, we have this lovely bad boy coming up. And my computer is slow to respond, so bear with me. Okay. So we're calling it a treasure hunt. And you know I love a good theme, but we're going to meet all day on March 3rd. And we are going to be going over a variety of technology tools, including Adobe Express. We're also going to be going over WeVideo, Book Creator, Cami, Screencastify, and Edpuzzle. They'll be split into 3 different sessions, and in each session, you'll have the option to choose between one or the other. We'll be going over the Tech Lift, which is a database that'll show you how you can connect some of these tools to your core content area curriculum. We're going to have a lending library lab, kind of like we had in September for the tech teachers. And we're really going to start looking at how we can utilize these tools to increase student engagement, to increase feedback, peer-to-peer feedback, and student-to-teacher feedback, and things of the sort. So this is coming up on the 3rd, okay? This is like brand new, just got approved this week. We'll be sending it out to schools here soon. Registration is required, and it is limited. So if you have any friends in your building that might be interested, tell them to sign up quickly. Now, the other thing we have coming up is our March PD Day. And while we will be doing lots of other things with our team, I'm looking for people, and I think Nadine and Carmen volunteered last time to do some training in the core content areas. And I'm trying to stop presenting. I don't know if it's working on your end or not. Mine just keeps freezing. So Carmen, or anyone we can get, would be going into the core content areas. I was thinking Nadine and Carmen might be a really good fit for science because they are STEM teachers. But if there's anyone who's interested in pushing into ELA or into math, I'd love to see that as well. I think Ashley on our team is going to be working with social studies. So anyone who's interested, let me know. You do get paid presenter hours for your planning time. And we'll take everyone we can get. And then we get to start planning for the fall. So I need more people for the fall as well.
And then in terms of the form I put into the chat, ultimately, our first meeting is going to be March 2nd, same time as now. And that's kind of, we have a ton of other training modules beyond the Creativity Institute that we do. Things like making thinking visible, visual communication tips, making infographics, all of that type of content. Plus, we want to show you the love. And if you're going to be out there training Adobe folks, we want to make sure we're giving you swag and doing all the stuff you need. So there'll be special opportunities for people on our district leader team. So if you're interested, fill that out. I'm going to keep putting out the link in the follow-up emails and stuff like that. But I will stick around for a few minutes. I have class in 7 minutes. But until then, if you have questions, I'm happy to hang out. Otherwise, I will see you next week for part 4, and we will get you all certified. Laura, it looks like you're having so much fun over there. I want to be where you are.
Hey, Sawyer, come here. Can you tell everybody if it was it hard or easy? Come here. Come here. Was it hard or easy to make the video? Come here. Oh, now he's nervous. He said he was pretending he was on NPR, and he was saying that he was the NPR broadcaster, and he was talking about the weather and all of that. So I just put the direct link that Jesse gave us onto my Clever page, and he clicked on it. The only catch is if you want them to download it, they have to be able to log into their Google account. So he was logged in because he's my kid. So he's already logged in, and it went right to his camera roll. So then you can share it with whomever from there. So he loves it.
Awesome.
Now you're going to show them.
Yes. Rosemary, if you guys are doing this, I want to see student examples. I love this. Awesome. I can't wait for next week. Thank you so much for giving up your valuable after school time.